At heart, this is a discussion not just about potential abuses and regulation, but competition. And in one respect, the net neutrality rules, there were a number of people who wanted them to be stronger and require things like unbundling, requiring broadband providers to wholesale their connections so other people could offer service over those, which is a commonplace thing in wireless, but unthinkable in residential broadband. The FCC took that off the table. There's no unbundling, no line sharing like there was with DSL. What can and should the FCC do to boost competition? We know there's the municipal broadband policy to try to overturn state bans, and we'll get to that in a second. What else is in the toolkit to try to address that?
I guess I'm answering that question. So, importantly, one of the Title II rules, so just to explain, what we did when we reclassified broadband internet access as a telecommunications provider, as telecommunications service under Title II of the Communications Act, was at the same time we said, look, Title II has a lot of sections that really shouldn't apply in a broadband world. And this is similar to how mobile voice has been regulated for over 20 years. Okay, we don't apply all of Title II because some of the provisions are just not applicable or not in the public interest. So we did the same thing here. So one of the sections, Section 224 of the Communications Act that we did apply, we did not forbear from, requires competitors to get fair access to poles and to conduit. And this is something that Google Fiber very much wants and has had trouble where it's wanted to build out. So we think that that's not the be-all, end-all. It's not, like community broadband. It's not the panacea to competition, but it will certainly help competitors compete. The other place where we want to do a better job of incenting competition is in our spectrum policy. So we've set aside a lot of unlicensed spectrum. So that is spectrum that nobody has a license to and that anybody can build to as long as they share. In addition, we've got a huge spectrum auction coming up. I don't want to explain all the details, but our rules would limit the amount of spectrum any one company can own. So we're trying through spectrum policy, through what we've done in the net neutrality rules and through community broadband, but we need more ideas for how to incent facilities-based competition.
Rob, just to give a perfect example of what we need, you look no further than Austin, where you have Google Fiber that is entered, and what has happened, and this is a great example of what happens to investment when you have competition. Time Warner responded, AT&T is building, others are building fiber in Austin, and now you're getting multiple networks. And wherever our nation has adopted a policy that has spurred multiple networks, first in long distance, then in wireless, bringing satellite to compete against cable, it always caused new networks, more networks, multiple options, and a functioning market versus a monopoly or duopoly market. And so if we can have what we have in Austin, everywhere around the country, that solves a lot of the issues that we have around open internet or any of the other contentious regulatory issues, because the market begins to function and work.
Let me give a different perspective. I'm not going to try and preach exactly what the FCC should do, because you're all more familiar with the situation here. But one thing that strikes me linking the open internet net neutrality debate with telecoms competition is the analogy of going to the doctor. So if anyone here is ill and you go and see your doctor, the doctor's probably going to do two things at the same time. They're going to try and understand what the disease is, what the problem is, and how they're going to cure that. And they're probably going to treat the symptoms as well. They're probably going to give you something to make you feel better before you've been treated for that disease. And that's a little bit the question here with competition in telecoms and what you as a business or as a consumer can do, what you can get to. Open internet rules are important, treating the symptom of the lack of competition. So the more facilities-based competition you can have, or sometimes not facilities-based competition, so something like a special access regime or a wholesale regime, the better. The more choices you've got in terms of who you're going to go to get your broadband access. That's an extremely important part.
So I'll sound a slightly different note, which is, or similar to that, which is we need net neutrality. We need rules that say no blocking, no fast lanes, no discrimination, no throttling. And we also need competition in broadband. We need both. And the reason why is because there's sort of complicated economics around the fact that, even if you can choose your ISP on day one, once you've chosen Comcast, the only way for Netflix to get to you is through Comcast.
Yeah.
You have a year-long contract. You're not going to switch to Verizon just midstream to try to get Netflix. You don't get two different subscriptions. And there are lots of things competition solves, but we don't take away fuel efficiency rules just because car companies compete with one another. You don't take away non-blocking rules just because you have a few phone companies competing. In some European countries, despite competition among mobile carriers, all of them were blocking Skype. So you just have to make sure you have both the belt and the suspenders. And an argument that seemed to be pretty common in DC was from AT&T and Verizon and Comcast was just deregulate us and let us make a ton of money, gouging consumers, and then we'll take it and we'll reinvest it. And we'll provide this awesome broadband experience. You just let us gouge consumers. And it turns out that never works. Instead, competition works. Google shows up and all of a sudden AT&T is like, we're going to do that too. Time Warner says we're going to do that too. Competition is how you get high speeds, low prices, better customer service, maybe. And so I think that's a lesson that DC should learn.